Top 10 Wealth Rules from Jewish plus Asian Culture that Built Generational Wealth. Ever wonder why 70% of American families lose their wealth by the third generation, while Jewish and Asian families have been staying rich for centuries? Picture this. While most American families struggle to build wealth that lasts beyond one generation, there are two cultures that have consistently created generational wealth for thousands of years, surviving persecution, economic collapses, wars, and massive social upheavals. Jewish and Asian communities don't just build wealth, they preserve and multiply it across centuries. While other cultures see wealth disappear within 2 to 3 generations, Jewish and Asian families often maintain prosperity for 10-plus generations. Whether it was Jewish banking dynasties in Europe or Asian merchant families in China, they all followed similar principles that most Americans have never learned. These weren't just smart people getting lucky. They were systematic approaches to wealth that treat money as a tool for family legacy, not personal consumption. Here's what shocked me most. These principles aren't complicated or require special advantages. They're simple rules about how to think about money, education, and family responsibility that any American family can adopt immediately. But most people never learn them because our culture teaches wealth building as individual achievement rather than generational responsibility. Today, I'm going to share 10 wealth rules that Jewish and Asian cultures have used to build and preserve generational wealth for thousands of years. These time-tested strategies can transform your family's financial trajectory forever. If you're ready to learn wisdom that has survived every economic crisis in human history and build wealth that lasts for generations, hit that subscribe button, type legacy in the comments, and let's dive into the first rule that forms the foundation of all generational wealth. Rule number 1. Education is the only investment that can't be taken away. Most American families prioritize material possessions over education investment, spending more on cars, gadgets, and lifestyle upgrades than on developing their children's minds and capabilities. Jewish and Asian cultures treat education as the ultimate insurance policy against economic uncertainty because knowledge can't be confiscated, stolen, or lost in market crashes. The first rule is prioritizing education investment above all other family expenses because educated minds create wealth in any economic environment. This means spending on books, courses, tutoring, and skill development before spending on consumption items that lose value over time. The Talmud teaches, if you have 2 loaves of bread, sell one and buy a lily, meaning even basic survival should include beauty and learning. Jewish culture has survived centuries of persecution partly because education made families portable and adaptable. Asian cultures similarly emphasize education as the foundation of family advancement across generations. Calculate your family's annual education investment versus consumption spending. Prioritize educational expenses like books, courses, tutoring, and skill development over entertainment, gadgets, and lifestyle purchases. Treat education as a non-negotiable family expense that gets funded before everything else. Track how education investments translate into increased earning potential over time. A Vietnamese immigrant family, led by parents who were farmers, spent 30% of their income on their children's education, despite living in a small apartment and driving old cars. All 3 children became doctors and engineers, lifting the family from poverty to upper middle class in one generation. Their education-first approach created wealth that consumption spending never could have achieved. There was a Jewish family that sold their larger home to afford private tutoring and advanced classes for their children. Neighbors thought they were crazy for downgrading their lifestyle, but 2 generations later, the family had produced multiple business owners and professionals, while the neighbors remained in the same economic class. The family learned that education investments compound across generations, while consumption expenses disappear immediately. When you prioritize education over consumption, you build human capital that creates wealth in any economic environment, instead of spending money on depreciating assets that create no lasting value. Rule number 2. Live below your means to invest above your income level. American culture encourages lifestyle inflation, spending more as you earn more, using credit to maintain appearances and consuming the maximum your income allows. Jewish and Asian wealth-building cultures practice deliberate lifestyle restraint to create investment capital that generates returns far beyond what their base income could achieve. The second rule is maintaining modest lifestyles regardless of income increases to maximize investment capacity that compounds wealth over decades. This means resisting lifestyle inflation and directing income increases toward wealth-building assets instead of consumption upgrades. The biblical principle of Joseph storing grain during 7 years of plenty to survive 7 years of famine illustrates this concept perfectly. Asian cultures similarly emphasize saving during good times to invest in opportunities during challenging periods, understanding that wealth comes from capital deployment, not consumption enjoyment. Set your lifestyle expenses based on 70% of your current income and maintain that level even as income grows. Direct all income increases toward investments rather than lifestyle upgrades. Calculate the compound growth of invested income increases versus the temporary satisfaction of consumption spending. Live like you make 30% less than you actually earn. A Chinese-American restaurant owner maintained the same modest lifestyle for 20 years while expanding from 1 restaurant to 5. Instead of upgrading his personal spending, he reinvested profits into real estate and additional restaurants. His lifestyle restraint built a $3 million net worth, while competitors who increased personal spending remained small business owners. There was a Jewish accountant who drove the same reliable car for 15 years and lived in a modest home despite earning 6 figures annually. He invested the difference between his modest lifestyle and his income into index funds and rental properties. His deliberate lifestyle restraint created $1.2 million in investments, while high-earning peers who inflated their lifestyles had minimal savings. When you live below your means consistently, you create investment capacity that builds wealth far beyond what consumption spending ever could achieve. If you've been increasing your lifestyle with every income increase, and this wealth-building approach resonates with you, pause and comment 1 below. If you're already living below your means or need different wealth strategies, comment 2 so I know what to focus on in future videos. Now let's dive into Rule 3 that separates generational wealth from individual success. Rule number 3, build family wealth, not individual wealth. Most Americans approach wealth building as individual achievement, focusing on personal retirement accounts, individual investment portfolios, and personal financial goals that end when they die. Jewish and Asian cultures build family wealth systems where each generation strengthens the foundation for the next, creating compound prosperity that grows exponentially across generations. The third rule is thinking beyond individual financial success to build family wealth infrastructure that benefits multiple generations simultaneously. This means making financial decisions based on family legacy rather than personal consumption, and structuring wealth to grow across generations rather than being depleted by them. The Torah teaches about inheritance laws that preserve family land across generations, preventing wealth concentration from destroying family foundations. Confucian philosophy similarly emphasizes family responsibility across generations, where individual success serves collective family advancement rather than personal gratification alone. Start family wealth meetings where multiple generations discuss financial goals, investment strategies, and legacy planning together. Pool family resources for larger investment opportunities that individuals couldn't access alone. Create family education funds, emergency funds, and investment accounts that serve multiple generations. Make financial decisions by asking, how does this benefit the family long-term? Instead of, how does this benefit me personally? A Korean-American family pooled resources across 3 generations to buy rental properties that no individual family member could afford alone. Their collective approach built a $2 million real estate portfolio that generates income for grandparents, parents, and grandchildren simultaneously. The family discovered that cooperation creates opportunities that individual effort cannot achieve. There was a Jewish family that created a family investment fund where each generation contributes and benefits according to their capacity and needs. Young family members receive education funding and business startup capital, while older generations receive retirement security and healthcare support. Their family wealth system has grown for 4 generations, now worth over $5 million, spread across 15 family members. A Chinese immigrant family sacrificed individual luxuries to build a family business that employed multiple generations and created wealth for dozens of family members. Their family-first approach built generational security that individual wealth building never could have achieved. When you build family wealth instead of just personal wealth, you create exponential growth through cooperation and legacy thinking that individual approaches cannot match. Rule number 4: invest in hard assets that survive economic collapse. American investors often focus on paper assets like stocks and bonds that can disappear during economic crises, currency devaluations, or political upheavals. Jewish and Asian wealth preservation emphasizes hard assets, real estate, precious metals, business ownership, and tangible goods that maintain value when financial systems collapse. The 4th rule is allocating significant wealth to hard assets that have preserved value through every economic crisis in human history. This means owning real estate, precious metals, productive businesses, and tangible assets that can't be printed away by governments or destroyed by market manipulation. Throughout history, Jewish communities survived economic persecution by converting wealth into portable hard assets, diamonds, gold, and valuable skills that maintained value across borders and currencies. Asian cultures similarly emphasize land ownership and precious metals as wealth preservation against political and economic instability. Allocate 40 to 60% of your wealth to hard assets, real estate that generates income, precious metals for crisis insurance, business ownership that creates value, and tangible assets with intrinsic worth. Avoid overconcentration in paper assets that depend on financial system stability. Study how hard assets performed during historical economic crises to understand their protective value. A Jewish family that survived multiple economic crises kept 50% of their wealth in real estate and precious metals, while friends lost everything in stock market crashes and currency devaluations. Their hard asset allocation preserved wealth through the 2008 financial crisis, COVID market volatility, and inflation spikes, while paper asset investors suffered major losses. There was an Asian immigrant family that bought rental properties instead of keeping money in bank accounts or stock portfolios. When inflation spiked to 8%, their rental income increased with inflation, while their properties appreciated in value. Their hard asset strategy protected and grew wealth, while financial assets lost purchasing power. A Chinese-American businessman learned from his grandfather's stories about currency collapses in China and allocated wealth across real estate, gold, and productive businesses rather than financial instruments. His diversified hard asset approach created wealth preservation that survived multiple economic downturns. When you own hard assets instead of just paper assets, you protect wealth against economic crises that destroy financial assets and preserve purchasing power across generations. Rule number 5: network for mutual prosperity, not personal gain. Most Americans network for personal advancement, trying to get something from relationships rather than creating mutual value. Jewish and Asian business cultures build networks based on mutual prosperity, where everyone benefits from collective success, creating business ecosystems that generate opportunities for all participants across generations. The 5th rule is developing relationships that create mutual prosperity rather than extractive networking that takes from others. This means helping other people succeed financially and building business communities where collective success creates individual opportunities naturally. The Talmud teaches, "Who is wise? One who learns from every person," emphasizing that wisdom and prosperity come from community learning rather than individual competition. Asian business culture similarly emphasizes guanxi, relationships based on mutual benefit and long-term cooperation rather than short-term exploitation. Focus on helping other people achieve their financial goals rather than just pursuing your own. Join or create business groups where members share opportunities, knowledge, and resources. Build relationships with people in complementary businesses who can refer clients and create partnership opportunities. Measure networking success by how much you help others prosper, not just personal gains. A Jewish businessman built a network of complementary service providers, accountants, lawyers, contractors, and consultants, who referred clients to each other for 20 years. This mutual prosperity network generated over $2 million in referral business for all participants, while creating deep business relationships that survived multiple economic cycles. There was a Chinese-American restaurant owner who helped other ethnic restaurant owners navigate permits, suppliers, and business challenges. His mutual aid approach created a referral network where restaurants recommended each other for catering, events, and different cuisine preferences. His community-building approach generated $500,000 in additional business over 5 years. An Asian tech entrepreneur created a mastermind group where business owners shared challenges, resources, and opportunities. The group's mutual prosperity approach led to joint ventures, investment opportunities, and business partnerships that created millions in collective wealth for all members. When you network for mutual prosperity instead of personal extraction, you build business relationships that generate opportunities and wealth for decades, rather than short-term personal gains. Rule number 6, think in decades and centuries, not years. American culture emphasizes quick results, quarterly profits, and short-term financial gains that often destroy long-term wealth-building potential. Jewish and Asian wealth preservation operates on multi-generational time horizons, where decisions consider impact across decades and centuries rather than immediate returns. The 6th rule is making all financial decisions through a multi-generational lens that prioritizes long-term wealth preservation and growth over short-term profits or consumption. This means choosing investments, businesses, and strategies that build value over decades, rather than providing quick returns. Jewish tradition includes planning for 7 generations in the future, considering how current decisions impact descendants far beyond immediate family. Chinese philosophy similarly emphasizes long-term thinking, where present actions create foundations for future generations, rather than just immediate personal benefit. Evaluate every major financial decision by asking, how will this impact my family in 20 to 50 years? Choose investments that compound over decades, rather than provide quick returns. Build businesses that can operate for generations, rather than just current profitability. Create family traditions around wealth building that can be passed down through generations. A Jewish family bought Manhattan real estate in the 1950s, despite friends saying it was too expensive for immediate returns. Their long-term thinking created $50 million in family wealth over 3 generations, while short-term focused peers missed generational opportunities by seeking immediate profits. There was an Asian immigrant family that planted fruit trees and built a farming operation that took 15 years to reach full production. Their long-term thinking created a profitable agricultural business that supported 3 generations, while neighbors who sought quick farming profits struggled with debt and failed ventures. A Chinese-American family built a manufacturing business with slim profits for the first decade, while investing heavily in equipment, relationships, and market development. Their long-term approach created a $10 million business that employed multiple family members, while competitors who sought immediate profits remained small operators. When you think in decades and centuries instead of years, you make decisions that create lasting wealth rather than temporary financial gains that disappear quickly. Rule number 7, protect wealth from taxes and legal destruction. Most Americans focus on building wealth, but ignore protecting it from taxes, lawsuits, and government confiscation that can destroy generations of accumulated prosperity. Jewish and Asian wealth preservation emphasizes legal protection strategies that shield assets from various forms of wealth destruction beyond just market losses. The 7th rule is implementing legal and tax protection strategies that preserve wealth across generations and economic systems. This means using trusts, business structures, international diversification, and legal planning that protects assets from taxes, lawsuits, political changes, and other wealth destruction forces. Throughout history, Jewish communities used portable wealth strategies and legal structures that protected assets from confiscation during persecution. Asian business families similarly structure wealth across multiple jurisdictions and legal entities to prevent single points of failure that could destroy family prosperity. Work with estate planning attorneys to create trusts, family-limited partnerships, and business structures that minimize taxes and protect assets from lawsuits. Diversify wealth across multiple countries and legal systems to prevent political risk concentration. Study tax laws to use legal strategies that preserve wealth for future generations, rather than losing it to unnecessary taxation. A Jewish family used family-limited partnerships and international trusts to protect their real estate empire from estate taxes and potential lawsuits. Their legal protection strategies saved over $3 million in taxes while shielding assets from business liability that could have destroyed generational wealth. Their protection-first approach preserved wealth that building-only strategies couldn't maintain. There was an Asian businessman who structured his manufacturing business across multiple entities and countries to protect against political risk and lawsuit exposure. When his industry faced massive litigation, his protected structure prevented personal wealth destruction, while competitors lost everything to legal judgments. A Chinese-American family created multiple LLCs and trusts to protect their restaurant chain from individual location liability and estate tax exposure. Their legal protection framework preserved $2 million in family wealth that would have been lost to taxes and legal issues without proper planning. When you protect wealth as systematically as you build it, you preserve generational prosperity against destruction forces that building alone cannot overcome. Rule number 8. Teach children wealth responsibility, not wealth entitlement. Most American wealthy families destroy their wealth by raising children who feel entitled to spend rather than responsible to preserve and grow family resources. Jewish and Asian cultures teach children that wealth comes with responsibility to strengthen the family foundation rather than consume it for personal pleasure. The 8th rule is raising children who understand wealth as family responsibility rather than personal inheritance, teaching them to be stewards who strengthen family prosperity rather than consumers who deplete it. This means involving children in wealth-building decisions and teaching them the principles that created family success. Proverbs teaches, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Jewish and Asian cultures apply this to financial education, teaching children wealth responsibility from early ages so they become wealth builders rather than wealth destroyers as adults. Include children in family financial discussions appropriate to their age level. Teach them about budgeting, investing, and business principles through hands-on experience. Require them to earn and manage money before giving them access to family wealth. Create systems where inheritance comes with responsibility and contribution requirements, rather than automatic entitlement. A Korean family required each child to successfully manage a small business and demonstrate financial responsibility before accessing family trust funds. Their responsibility-based approach produced 3 generations of successful entrepreneurs who expanded family wealth rather than depleting it through entitlement spending. There was a Jewish family that involved children in rental property management, family business decisions, and investment discussions from age 12. Their hands-on financial education created children who understood wealth-building principles and continued expanding family prosperity as adults, rather than just consuming inherited wealth. A Chinese immigrant family required children to work in the family restaurant, manage personal budgets, and contribute to family financial goals before receiving college funding or business investment. Their responsibility-first approach created financially disciplined adults who built their own wealth while strengthening family resources. When you teach wealth responsibility instead of wealth entitlement, you create children who multiply family prosperity rather than deplete it through ignorance or entitlement. Rule number 9. Create multiple income streams from assets, not just jobs. Most Americans depend on single-job income streams that disappear during layoffs, economic downturns, or industry disruptions. leaving families financially vulnerable when their primary income source stops. Jewish and Asian wealth-building cultures create multiple income streams from assets, rental properties, businesses, investments, and royalties that generate money regardless of employment status. The ninth rule is building asset-based income streams that work independently of your personal labor and time investment. This means owning income-producing assets that generate cash flow whether you're working, sick, traveling, or retired, creating financial security that job income alone cannot provide. King Solomon's wealth came from multiple sources: trade routes, real estate, business ventures, and agricultural operations, rather than depending on a single income source. Asian merchant families similarly built wealth through diversified business interests that protected against single industry downturns and created compound prosperity across multiple markets. Start building your second income stream while maintaining your primary job. Focus on assets that generate passive income, rental properties, dividend stocks, business ownership, or intellectual property. Reinvest income from secondary streams into additional assets rather than lifestyle upgrades. Set a goal to replace 25% of your job income with asset income within 5 years, then continue growing until asset income exceeds employment income. A Jewish accountant used his tax expertise to start a bookkeeping service that generated $2,000 monthly while keeping his day job. He reinvested profits into rental properties that produced another $1,800 monthly. Within 8 years, his asset income exceeded his salary, giving him financial independence that job income alone never could have provided. There was a Chinese-American engineer who bought damaged properties, renovated them during weekends, and rented them out for positive cash flow. His real estate income stream grew to $4,500 monthly over 6 years, while his engineering salary provided initial investment capital and living expenses. A young man worked 2 jobs to save money, but instead of just accumulating cash, he bought a small laundromat. The business generated modest income initially, but he reinvested profits into additional machines and better locations. Eventually, his laundromat income replaced both job incomes, and he expanded into a chain of 5 locations. He learned that assets work for you even when you're sleeping, while jobs only pay when you're present. When you create multiple asset-based income streams instead of depending on single job income, you build financial security that survives economic uncertainty and creates wealth that compounds over time. Rule number 10. Preserve wealth culture through family traditions. American families often lose wealth culture within one generation because financial knowledge isn't systematically passed down through family traditions and regular practices. Jewish and Asian families preserve wealth-building wisdom through cultural traditions, regular family meetings, storytelling, and ceremonial practices that embed financial principles into family identity across generations. The 10th rule is creating family traditions that systematically teach and reinforce wealth-building principles, so financial wisdom becomes part of family culture, rather than individual knowledge that dies with each generation. This means establishing regular family financial education, celebration of wealth milestones, and storytelling traditions that preserve lessons learned. Jewish families preserve financial wisdom through Sabbath discussions about business ethics, Passover storytelling that includes family financial history, and Bar Bat Mitzvah ceremonies that include financial responsibility education. Asian cultures similarly use New Year celebrations, ancestor veneration, and family gatherings to pass down business principles and wealth-building stories across generations. Create monthly family wealth meetings, where multiple generations discuss financial goals, share investment successes and failures, and plan collective strategies. Establish family financial traditions like annual investment reviews, business milestone celebrations, and wealth education gifting. Document family financial history through stories, photos, and written records that preserve lessons for future generations. Make wealth building a family identity rather than individual activity. A Japanese-American family held monthly wealth circles where grandparents shared business stories, parents reported on current investments, and children learned about money management through age-appropriate activities. Their systematic approach preserved financial wisdom across 4 generations, with each generation building on previous knowledge rather than starting from scratch. There was a Jewish family that created an annual prosperity Sabbath, where they celebrated financial milestones, shared investment lessons, and planned family financial goals for the coming year. Their tradition preserved wealth culture that helped 7 grandchildren become successful entrepreneurs and investors who continued expanding family prosperity. An elderly immigrant grandmother noticed her American-born grandchildren had no understanding of the financial principles that built the family business. She started weekly storytelling sessions where she shared tales of building their restaurant empire from nothing, teaching them about customer service, cost control, and reinvestment strategies. Years later, when the grandchildren inherited the business, they had the cultural foundation to expand it successfully, rather than running it into the ground through ignorance. When you preserve wealth culture through family traditions, you ensure that financial wisdom survives and grows across generations, instead of being lost when individual family members pass away. Now you understand the 10 wealth rules that Jewish and Asian cultures have used to build and preserve generational prosperity for thousands of years. These aren't complicated investment strategies or secret techniques. They're systematic approaches to thinking about money, family, and time that create lasting wealth instead of temporary financial success. The difference between families that stay wealthy for generations and those that lose everything by the 3rd generation comes down to culture, not just capital. When you treat wealth as family responsibility rather than personal achievement, think in decades instead of years, and teach financial wisdom as family tradition, you create prosperity systems that survive economic crashes, political upheavals, and generational transitions. Choose one of these 10 rules to implement immediately in your family this week. Whether it's starting family wealth meetings, increasing education investment, or building your first asset-based income stream, the key is beginning today rather than waiting for perfect conditions tomorrow. Which rule resonated most strongly with your family situation? Comment below and tell me which principle you're implementing first. Your sharing helps other families learn from your experience and commitment. If this video opened your eyes to generational wealth thinking, share it with someone who needs to see these time-tested principles. Sometimes one conversation can change a family's entire financial trajectory forever. Here's the truth about building generational wealth. It's not about how much money you start with. It's about how systematically you apply proven principles that have created lasting prosperity for thousands of years. Your family's financial legacy starts with the decisions you make today. Remember, wealth without wisdom disappears, but wisdom without wealth can create prosperity from nothing. Start building both and watch your family transform across generations.